It was so hot in Warunga you could fry an egg. While in the pub, a conspirator slipped in on past business. With the beer on life support, this was a member of Tung's intelligence network. But why now?
This is 50 degrees in the shade. Listen to Chapter 1 free. I'm Kentuzi Shermore for No Tomorrow Online.
At the Opinion Hotel, Claudia and Boris were conversing over a previous high-stakes environmental conflict when she recognized the observer's melon.
Claudia didn't miss a trick.
Listen to Chapter 1.
Kentuzi Shermore from No Tomorrow Online here, and I'm back with you guys, concerned citizens of a heating world, to read 50 degrees in the shade while you sit in the aircon.
Chapter 1. Opinion Hotel Monday night. The Opinion Hotel may have been renovated, but in the back bar held over by guest bookers, a thin beam of light penetrated the cladding. A small mess on the floor looked like a scorpion had fried. Passers through could expect a wildlife dimension from a hotel born out of discussion. Boris crossed his legs and graciously accepted the smoky, herbaceous martini Claudia had brought back to the table. You never seem to sweat, Claudia. I can only imagine your enzymes. It's staying away from the city. Great to see you again. As in alive, Boris. How did you fake death? We heard you were split in half by the seedy Lazozo, the lone wolf in Rubenovov's goon squad. Word abounds that he fired a Glossary launcher in your direction. I can honestly say, I apologize in the extreme because we weren't far away when it happened. We just didn't know. Claudia was so happy. I wish his goon didn't have a name. The Woolgum women found me before the night remained dark forever. They submerged me in a pace they had in the Team Spider bus. I've been living it up at Camp Woolgum, working on an online video course for carbon sufferers. I've heard the place is now a tranquil retreat, built on the bones of violent men. It's been a rustic retirement of sorts, with a view of some very productive activities. All the men have been buried in the concrete footings of the new school, which is now flourishing under the current headmaster. It gets even more business savvy. Every dried scrotum collected has been sold in China as an exotic trinket pouch. They are printing money. We thought you were gone. Can I get some of that paste? I see it cures more than puffy eye sockets. It's known as gomba goo. Have you heard of umbugo? Boris leaned forward to avoid a horsefly. Umbugo was a revered elder near Rockhampton in the 50s. Long story short, he dragged a slave trader for 100 miles behind a tractor, then pureed his carcass and mixed the result with Atashuya cornova sap, producing a venereal paste that cured white settler-induced diseases. I got the evolutionary refined upgrade, which can regenerate organs. I got lucky. What must have been another guest entered the area and seemed concerned with seating. Boris had one more thing to add. You know I like a good operational mop-up, and none has been had until now. It's part of dying. He began downing the martini, as if more would be lined up. He wasn't desperate, but had been drinking gomba extract for 2 years. Claudia reflected. How are you going to play it now that the Gold Coast Police Service believes you were strewn all over the desert? Reportedly, it was quite a service funeral. I've picked up a few allies from those years at Southport Homicide. Tupolano made it out with a payout and half a missing leg. Now he is running a Gold Coast surf shop for prosthesis sufferers with a nifty salad outlet. I'll be encouraging those friendships moving forward. I heard the sausage roll intake in Homicide has halved. Boris gestured for a refill. Claudia wanted to get it out. I've picked up a job in Cairo. Does Cairo equal the body parts trade? Asked Boris. I was hoping it wasn't. Claudia had sadness for the exploited many. Fat, infertile men preying on women from lesser means and organising the commodification of their organs. Can it get any worse? Boris looked gaunt for a moment at the thought of the dispossessed, living in squalid heat with no sanitation, and the final indignity of being rounded up by greasy agents of doom. Claudia continued, If you get some particulars on the export market to China, we'll be able to dish up some petrified Egyptian nutsacks. Could go gangbusters in Trinket Land. Boris laughed. It's a gainful employment month because I've been sent a brief. It all happens on the same fair land upon which we stand. Do tell, what else have you been doing? Claudia knew part of the answer. Boris considered life without causes a false identity. I've recently been held up at El Rancho Del Mar. I'm planning a desert variety horticultural wonderland, even if it goes against the grain stumbling onto a hard luck property sale. Claudia was aware of the location and the circumstances. Rancho Del Mar was owned by a father and son who kept to themselves. They had struck bad luck when they were dumped in the vat of their water truck by Rubenovov's crew. Claudia wanted another drink, almost as much as she wanted to hear what Boris had in his saddlebag on the Australian mainland. As she selected the right credit card and headed for the bar, she caught sight of the would-be guest as he rounded a raw timber column. She knew that melon but wasn't sure. An Anglo-Asian profile doesn't make someone a conspirator, but this was a tourist who missed the flight to Sydney. She went the way he had gone. There were 5 vehicles in the annex guest car park, and the lighting was bad. Between her vehicle and another was the shadowed melon lighting up a cigarette in the night. He was using the phone. She got a snapshot of the past. She remembered the connection in a sickly second. She went down like a cat, moving around the car park on 4 limbs below fender height. With the intent of many, she flew a foot sideways and busted the smoker's kneecap. Then, arcing his arm, she drove the phone straight up into his pillow sack. He went down, inhaling everything. As he coughed, she opened the door of her Camry, then slammed his head until it was butterscotch. Before he hit the ground, she rammed him into the boot and brought the lid down before he was ready. There wasn't a sound. Back with Boris, Claudia continued. I can't stay. Did you know Tung was eaten by magpies? Well, now I've got a member of her organisation in the boot of the Camry, so I'd better take off. I'm thinking northwest, Boris said. Will he get the termite mound treatment? Then he got faintly melancholy. Is Wendy still around? I'm going to need good staff for this next thing. Will I tell La Foreste you hate Cairo? I have 2 cops back at the Gold Coast who can help, and maybe Tupolano. I do miss Spalante's Ginger Emporium on 6th. Boris had largely loved his time as head of Gold Coast Homicide, but the end date had arrived at the Battle of Flagstaff. A property owned by British superannuation interests had returned to normal operating procedures, as if no blood had been let. With Boris, the force had never looked past its nose to understand how an officer of distinction was moonlighting as an eco-warrior with a penchant for healthy food. They simply held up his memory for good morale and stuck a mugshot up for posterity. Claudia leaned in slightly and lowered the delivery. Someone who knows your brief has turned for the bad, and Boot Boy has turned up here. Tung was counterintelligence, so the leak wants the Chinese to share in the fun. What's the connection? I'll give some thought to who the laggard insider might be. We can't have people dropping in on our meetings. How many people does Dumont confide in? Claudia went straight to the top. It's a close circle and goes back to the 70s when you were a pup. The connection is more abstract. Tung was protecting investments for Beijing Gardens, so the work is continuing. The rogue insider has got to be a relative of the La Foreste board, or an extortionist with means. Claudia was inquisitive at an innate level. I've never even seen a picture. I have an imaginary sense of the man. I believe you go back some 40 years or more to the halcyon days in the Pyrenees. Is it true he started the organisation by pinning a French logging tycoon to a radial pine with hollow-pointed arrows? That is an accurate account. It makes good folklore, but it is also only part of the equation. Boris started lamenting the eternal struggle to save the planet from elites with one generational self-interest. Regarding the so-called brief, I have dubbed the initiative Operation Flatulence in Hope. Shut down the gas export industry for good and stop the brain farting. Claudia was feeling energised. Cairo was a worthy cause, but this was local. She hated patriarchy so much that she didn't want to go. I'll see if Cairo can wait. Claudia, before you go, you should know that battle we had at Flagstaff with Rubenov and associates was down to people in the reinsurance caper betting against clean air and betting on dud governments. It's almost hard to fathom. It's a group within a group known as Pignolia, and they're back to rectify those losses through support for the expansion of gas. Do we know who they are beyond reputation? We don't, but unfortunately they appear to know more about us. They hugged, and Boris headed for tonight's community meeting at Girdles.
In Chapter 2, Boris dangles the future action carrot to Warunga Mayor Harry Turnhill. This is Cantusi Shermore signing off Dura Dura for 50 degrees in the shade. Stock up on sunscreen, it's gonna get hotter.